If you're under 40, I already know what you think of people like me. You think we're out of touch. You think the world is different now. You think our advice doesn't apply to you. That belief is exactly why you're going to suffer the way we did. I'm 90 years old. I've buried my parents, my husband, most of my friends, and some of my regrets are older than you are. I've lived long enough to watch 3 entire generations make the same mistakes with different technology. The faces change, the excuses sound modern, but the regrets, they're identical. You know what I hear constantly? I'm still young. I have time. I'll figure it out later. Every single person I know who said those things, every single one, ended up begging for time they could never get back. They sat in hospital beds, they sat across from me at funerals, they sat alone in houses that were paid off but empty, and they all said the same thing. I thought I had more time. And here's what should scare you. You are not smarter than time. You're not the exception. You're not going to hack it or optimize it or manifest your way around it. Time is the only thing in life that doesn't negotiate, doesn't care about your feelings, and never, ever gives refunds. I'm not here to give you advice. I don't care if you like me. I'm here to give you a warning I earned through pain, through waste, through decades of choosing comfort over meaning. I watched my mother die without ever asking herself what she wanted. I watched my friends become strangers to themselves. I became one of them. Modern life has sold you something incredibly dangerous, the idea that you can optimize happiness later, that you can delay living until after you've prepared enough, earned enough, figured yourself out enough. You're surrounded by people telling you to find yourself while they've spent 40 years lost. You're told to hustle now and rest later, as if rest is a reward you unlock instead of a basic need. You're taught that stability equals success, that comfort equals contentment, that a full calendar means a full life. It doesn't. I have watched people spend their entire youth building a life they don't even want. I've watched them climb ladders leaning against the wrong walls. I've watched them sacrifice their present for a future that never arrives the way they imagined. And by the time they realize what actually matters, the bill has already been paid, and it is always paid in years. You think you're being smart by waiting. You think you're being responsible by putting things off. You think there's a right time coming, a moment when everything will align and you'll finally be ready to start living the life you actually want. That moment is a lie. It's a lie that will steal decades from you before you even realize you've been robbed. I'm not speaking theoretically. I'm not sharing wisdom I read in a book. I'm telling you what I learned by losing 50 years to the belief that life was something I would get to eventually. I delayed joy. I delayed honesty. I delayed myself. And when I finally woke up, I was 71 years old, standing at my husband's funeral, realizing I had spent half a century waiting for permission to want things. No one is coming to give you that permission. No one is coming to tell you it's okay to start now. No one is coming to rescue you from the life you're building by default. So here's my warning, and I need you to hear it. Every year you spend waiting is a year you will grieve when you're my age. Every someday you tell yourself is a small betrayal of the person you could have been. Every time you choose comfort over truth, you are trading your future self's peace for your present self's convenience, and your future self will remember. Let me take you back. Des Moines, Iowa, 1948. I was 13 years old. My father, Harold, sold insurance. My mother, Margaret, kept the house. We were ordinary, stable, respectable, and profoundly unhappy, though no one would have said it that way. Happiness wasn't something we discussed in our house. It wasn't even something we considered a reasonable goal. You didn't ask, "What do I want?" You asked, "What's practical?" You didn't pursue passion. You pursued security. The entire culture I grew up in was designed around one principle: don't want too much, don't cause trouble, and don't mistake your feelings for facts. I watched my mother age early. She was always busy, always tired, always serving. She never sat down without folding something, never had a conversation without also washing dishes, never took a moment that wasn't in service of someone else. I never once heard her ask what she wanted. I don't think the question even occurred to her, and I absorbed that, not consciously, not as a decision, but as an assumption about how life worked. Life was something you endured first and maybe enjoyed later if there was time left over, if you were lucky, if you'd been good enough. I went to college at Drake University, studied education, not because I loved teaching, not because I felt called to it, but because it was safe, because it was appropriate for a woman, because it wouldn't challenge anyone or require too much from me. I was surrounded by friends who felt the same way. We were all waiting for our real lives to begin, as if our 20s were some kind of rehearsal. We said it all the time. We're still young. We have time. That sentence should be classified as a weapon because it feels so harmless. It feels true. You are young, you do have time, in the sense that you're not dying tomorrow. But what that phrase actually does is teach you to treat the present as disposable. It teaches you that right now doesn't count, that who you are today is just a rough draft of who you'll really become later. It teaches you to throw away years. I didn't notice myself doing it. No one does. You don't wake up at 23 and think, I'm wasting my life. You think you're being smart, careful, realistic. You tell yourself you're building a foundation. You tell yourself that once you have the degree, the job, the relationship, the house, once you have those things, then you'll start living.
But life doesn't wait for you to be ready. It's happening right now, whether you're paying attention or not. And the version of you that's waiting, that's not a placeholder. That's you. Those years count. Those choices matter. That numbness you're calling responsibility is actually resignation, and it's carving out pieces of you that you'll never get back. I spent my entire 20s believing I was early, that I had decades to figure things out, that the real decisions would come later when I was more prepared, more certain, more adult. I treated my youth like a waiting room instead of a life. And here's what no one tells you about that mindset. It doesn't end when you hit 30. It just updates its excuse. At 30, you say, I'm still figuring things out. At 40, you say, it's too late to change now. At 50, you stop saying anything at all because the truth has become unbearable. Time doesn't feel real until it's gone. Youth hides consequences. When you're 25, wasting a year feels like nothing. You'll recover, you'll make up for it. But those years don't disappear. They accumulate into decades, and decades become a life. And suddenly you're 70, looking back, wondering where it all went. Nothing robs you faster than the illusion that you're early. Nothing destroys you more quietly than the belief that your real life is waiting for you somewhere up ahead. Because it isn't. This is it, right now, today. The life you're living while you wait for your life to start, that's your actual life. And if you're not careful, you'll spend all of it preparing for a moment that never comes. I was 23, 25, 27, believing I had infinite time to become myself. I didn't. Neither do you. I married Thomas Whitmore when I was 27. We met in St. Louis. He worked in accounting. He was kind, reliable, and emotionally reserved in the way most men of that generation were. People approved of him. My parents liked him. He made sense on paper. And I didn't marry him because I was deeply in love. I married him because it made sense. That's the sentence I need you to hear. Not because I didn't care about Thomas, I did, but because I never asked myself if sense was enough. I never asked if I wanted passion or partnership or something wild and consuming. I asked if the choice was reasonable, if it would work, if people would approve. And we did work for decades. We moved constantly, Omaha, Wichita, Sacramento, chasing slightly better jobs, slightly bigger houses, slightly more respectable versions of the life we were supposed to want. I raised children, I worked part-time jobs, I volunteered at churches and schools and community centers. People praised me. I was dependable, responsible, a good wife, a good mother. But I was empty. Not dramatically empty, not sobbing in the bathroom empty, just numb, like I was watching my own life happen from a distance, going through motions that everyone assured me were correct. I did everything right and felt nothing. The dreams I'd had, and I did have them once, vague and unformed as they were, got dismissed as unrealistic. When I mentioned wanting to travel, Thomas would say we couldn't afford it. When I thought about going back to school for something I actually cared about, I'd remind myself I was too old, too busy, too responsible. Every desire I had got postponed indefinitely, filed away under someday, until eventually I stopped having them at all. Life became logistics, shopping lists and dental appointments and parent-teacher conferences and bills. I became very good at managing a household and very bad at remembering I was a person with wants that mattered. Here's what I need you to understand. Misery doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't kick down your door and announce itself. It settles in quietly and introduces itself as responsibility. It shows up as exhaustion and tells you that's maturity. It shows up as numbness and calls itself peace. And you accept it because everyone around you has accepted it too. Because this is what adulthood looks like, apparently. This is what being a grown-up means. I hit 40, then 50, then 60, and I kept waiting for something to change, for some switch to flip, for the life I was building to suddenly start feeling like enough. Nothing changed. Thomas and I existed next to each other. We were polite, we shared a house and a routine and decades of history, but I couldn't tell you the last time either of us had had a conversation that mattered, the last time either of us had been truly vulnerable, the last time we asked each other what we actually wanted for the years we had left. My children grew up and moved away. My friends had their own families, their own quiet disappointments they never discussed. I volunteered more, kept myself busy, kept myself useful, because if I stopped moving, I'd have to face the silence, and the silence was unbearable. You don't wake up unhappy one day. You don't have a sudden crisis where you realize everything's wrong. You wake up numb and call it adulthood. You wake up tired and call it responsibility. You wake up disconnected from yourself and call it maturity. I spent 40 years doing everything I was supposed to do. I checked every box, I fulfilled every role, I made every sensible choice. And at the end of it all, I looked around and realized I'd built a life I didn't recognize, a life I had never chosen, a life that had happened to me while I was busy being appropriate. And the worst part, I didn't even know how to be angry about it because no one had done this to me. I had done it to myself, one small compromise at a time, one postponed dream at a time, one I'll do it later at a time. Later never came.
Thomas died when I was 71. Heart attack. Sudden. One day he was there, the next day I was sitting in a funeral home making decisions about caskets and flower arrangements and which photos to display for a man I'd spent 44 years with but never really knew. And in the silence after, the terrible, enormous silence of an empty house, I started noticing something unexpected: relief. Mixed with grief, yes, real grief, but also relief. And then guilt about the relief. And then beneath the guilt, something terrifying: freedom. For the first time in decades, no one needed anything from me. No one was watching, no one had expectations. I could do anything, go anywhere, become anyone, and I had absolutely no idea who I was. I moved to Carmel by the Sea, a place Thomas and I had visited once decades ago and I'd loved, a place he'd said was too expensive and impractical and we'd never discussed again. I moved there at 71 because I finally realized no one was going to give me permission. I started walking on the beach every morning, started reading books I'd always meant to read, started painting, badly, just because I wanted to, started talking to strangers, started asking myself for the first time in my entire life what I actually wanted. And that's when the realization hit me, fully and brutally. I was never unhappy because life was cruel. I was unhappy because I never asked myself what I wanted. Not once, not in 71 years. I had spent my entire existence waiting for someone to tell me it was okay to want things, waiting for permission that never came because no one else was responsible for giving it to me. I had confused patience with virtue. I had confused self-denial with maturity. I had confused waiting for living, and I had done it so thoroughly, so completely, that I had forgotten there was another option. Let me tell you something. You don't need a tragedy to wake up. You don't need your spouse to die. You don't need a crisis. You don't need to hit rock bottom. You don't need to finish everything on your to-do list first. You don't need anyone's approval or permission or blessing. Happiness is not found. It is allowed. You are allowed to want things. You are allowed to try things that might not work. You are allowed to disappoint people. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to choose yourself, not someday, not after you've earned it, but right now. And here's why so many people under 40 are struggling right now, because you are drowning in the same lie I was. You think you have to prepare more, understand more, be more certain. You think clarity comes before action, that you need to figure everything out before you can start. It doesn't work that way. Clarity comes after you try, after you fail, after you experiment and mess up and stumble forward. You don't think your way into a new life, you live your way into it. I wasted 50 years waiting to feel ready, waiting to be sure, waiting for some magical moment when everything would make sense and I'd finally know what to do. That moment doesn't exist. You will never feel completely ready. You will never have perfect information. You will never eliminate all risk. And if you wait until you do, you will wait forever. At 71, I finally started living. Do you understand how devastating that sentence is? I had maybe 15 good years left, maybe, and I'd spent all the others preparing for something I never started. Don't do what I did. Don't confuse caution with wisdom. Don't confuse waiting with planning. Don't sacrifice your present for a future you'll never reach because you were too afraid to risk being wrong. The life you want is not waiting for you to become worthy of it. It's waiting for you to choose it right now. Messy, uncertain, imperfect, right now. I'm 90 years old now. I've had 19 years of actually living, 19 years of knowing what I want and pursuing it, 19 years of honesty with myself. It's not nothing. It's more than many people get, but it should have been 70. So let me tell you what I've learned, what I wish someone had told me when I was your age, when I still had time to course correct, when the mistakes were still reversible. People don't regret trying. They regret waiting. I have never met a single person at the end of their life who said, "I wish I'd been more careful." Not one. But I've met hundreds who said, "I wish I'd started sooner." Time does not reward patience. It doesn't give you bonus years for being cautious. It doesn't wait for you to be ready. Every day you delay is a day you lose, and you don't get those back. Ever. Life does not slow down for understanding. You want to figure yourself out completely before you make a move? You'll be figuring yourself out until you die. Self-knowledge doesn't come from thinking. It comes from doing. You learn who you are by trying things, not by analyzing yourself in circles. Call someone today, not tomorrow, not when you have more time. Today, call the person you've been meaning to reach out to, the friend you miss, the family member you've been avoiding. Call them right now, because I cannot tell you how many people I loved who I waited to call until it was too late. Start something now. Not Monday, not next month, not when you're more prepared. Now. Start the project, start the hobby, start the business, start the relationship, start the conversation. Start badly if you have to, but start. Say no more often to obligations that drain you, to people who don't value you, to versions of success that aren't actually yours. No is a complete sentence, and every time you say yes when you mean no, you are betraying yourself. Choose yourself earlier. Stop waiting for everyone else to be okay before you pursue what you want. Stop shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. Stop postponing your own life until you've solved everyone else's problems. Your future self is watching you right now. They're watching every choice you make, every delay you justify, every dream you file away under someday, and they are begging you not to waste what they no longer have. I'm 90 years old. I am not afraid of dying. Death is inevitable, and honestly, by this point, I've made my peace with it. What I'm afraid of, what keeps me awake some nights, even now, is how many people never truly live before they do. How many people spend their entire existence waiting for permission, waiting for certainty, waiting for the perfect moment, and then look up one day to realize they've waited their entire life away. I'm afraid you're going to be one of them. So here's my final question, and I need you to answer it honestly. If you're under 40, what are you postponing that your future self will beg you not to? What are you telling yourself you'll do later that you need to do now? What dream are you filing away? What conversation are you avoiding? What life are you delaying? Because I promise you, later feels far away until it's too late. And then you're 90 making videos for strangers on the internet, hoping that maybe, just maybe, one person will hear this and make a different choice than I did. Don't be me at 71 finally starting. Be you at whatever age you are right now, beginning. The clock is already running. It's been running your entire life, and it will not stop for you to feel ready. Start now.